Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Access City Council. I'm your host, City of Las Vegas Communications Director, David Riggleman. Coming up on this show, redistricting in Ward 1 results in over 8,000 new residents. And we tell you about a new effort by local leaders to keep our roads safe. Here to talk about these topics and a whole lot more is the councilman who represents Ward 1. You know who it is, Mr. Brian Knudsen. Welcome back. Happy New Year. How are you?
Very happy to be here. Happy New Year.
It's your first show of 2022. And already a lot of change. At the end of 2021, the council voted to redistrict the lines of the wards. And so this is the old map. This is what the boundary lines look like. Now, you're going to notice that Ward 1 is going to change, and we're going to show you there. It goes like that, kind of more to the west and to the north. And those are the current lines of Ward 1. So, Councilman, explain to everyone, why do we redraw these lines? What takes place there?
So I got a lot of questions during this process about why we have to do this. Every 10 years when the census comes, there's a requirement under law that elected officials are plus or minus a few points in who they represent and how many people they represent. It's based on total number of people. There's really nothing else considered. It's how many people are within that boundary. Right. And so because of the explosive growth we've seen in Southern Nevada and Las Vegas in particular, there's been a lot of growth in the Northwest. And so what we had to do was grow wards 3 and 5 really, and they needed to shift north and west, and Ward 1 had to grow north and west, and Ward 6 up in the Northwest had to shrink a little bit. Yep. And so that's what happened. It was a little bit of a painful process for me. I lost some really good neighbors. I lost some really good businesses that I cared a lot about, but I also gained a lot. And so we have about 8,300 new residents and 800 or so new businesses, and we're doing our very best to reach out to all of them and let them know that I'm here for them.
You didn't waste any time. You posted this on Facebook. You said this month, Team Knudsen sent out 8,343 welcome letters to the new residents of Ward 1. So you did lose some people, but you also picked up quite a few. They have more than 8,000 there.
It's a lot of people. And immediately, as soon as they got the letter, they started emailing. They got issues. And so that's my job, is to listen and do my very best to resolve as many issues as I can.
Want to let everybody know, too, if you're not quite sure what ward you're in, if your ward changed, you would have been notified.
Yes.
But if you're not quite sure, you can still go on the city's website, look on there, put in your address, and it'll tell you what ward you're in, who your council member is.
That's exactly right.
And again, Councilman, you touched on this. The idea here is that each of you on the city council represents roughly the same number of constituents, right?
It's about 115,000, give or take. And so over the next 10 years, we're going to see more explosive growth, and you'll see boundaries change in 10 years. But for now, these are the boundaries, and we'll have them for the next 10 years.
It can relate to what people are experiencing out there where we live. We live within the city limits. When we first moved to the city, we were in Ward 2, then we were in Ward 4, now we're back in Ward 2. So
that's exactly it, yeah.
Part of the process. So.
And our congressional districts too, because I was Congressional District 1 and now I'm Congressional District 4. So a lot of us have seen a little bit of change from the political boundaries.
Right, and again, it's so that each elected official has roughly the same number of constituents as their counterparts do.
Right.
So, all right. Councilman, this is pretty cool too. You did some beautiful recognition of the health district at a recent city council meeting, and this has been a very tough time for them. The last 2 years with this pandemic has just been nonstop.
Yep, and actually it's the Southern Nevada Community Health Center. It's a branch off of the Southern Nevada Health District, so it's a nonprofit, federally qualified healthcare center. It's an FQHC. And this was started right before the pandemic, so about 2 years ago, a little right before. And since then, as really a separate organization, has become a thriving, flourishing healthcare center that serves thousands of people within our community. It's targeted at the 89107 zip code, but also has a location off of Fremont. And because it's a part of the health district but separate, it has its own separate governing board. So I'm fortunate enough to be the chair of the Community Health Center. And as a board, we've been really focusing in on beefing up our mental health care services because we know that's such an issue in our community.
Exactly.
But kudos to Dr. Legan, who's the executive director, and to the team at the Community Health Center for creating something out of nothing, and now it's a thriving healthcare center right in the middle of an area that desperately needs it.
Yeah, exactly. The timing couldn't have been any better. And you touched on this, Councilman. You are on the Southern Nevada Health District Board. You and Councilwoman Diaz from the City of Las Vegas represent the city on that board, and been a very challenging time with COVID-19 going on. So
they have a huge responsibility in our community, and every single one of them have been doing their very best. And Just like everywhere else in the country, we're overwhelmed, and it's a lot to deal with, and hopefully we'll get through it very quickly.
Yeah, I think it's a good team assembled there with good leadership, and we're making progress. So hopefully this is coming to an end. I keep saying.
I hope so.
Yeah, exactly. Please let it come to an end. Medically related, the medical district is in Ward 1. I know it's something you're very proud of, and you posted this on Facebook. You said, today, it was great to get an inside look at the ongoing construction of the Kirk Kerkorian School of Medicine at UNLV Medical Education Building. And this is pretty cool because until I saw your video here, this medical school building is going up a lot faster than I thought it was.
Yeah, I would encourage anybody who pays attention. Hopefully everyone's paying attention. I spend a lot of time talking about healthcare. The medical school is the first of many buildings that are come into that area, and is really a significant step forward in healthcare in Southern Nevada. So if you have a chance, I'd encourage you to drive down Charleston and Shadow, or Alta and Shadow. All of Shadow is currently under construction, but it'll be done soon. There's 10 to 15 foot sidewalks with tree-lined streets, and then you're going to come across this medical school building. This will be done and operating in the fall of this year.
That's amazing.
So our medical students will be starting school in that building. And that, to me, is really the significant, monumental task of the private donors, the university, the city, the county. Everybody came together to make sure that we can improve healthcare in Southern Nevada. That's the first example you're going to see, and there's going to be many more after that.
That's impressive. I mean, that's 6-8 months from now. There'll be students in that building.
And 10 years to get to that point before. So here we are. It's almost to that point, and we're just getting started.
It seems like the groundbreaking was just yesterday.
Yeah.
Maybe it's been a little longer. We've kind of time changed.
Put a pandemic in the middle, and that's what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then, Councilman, you also had a roundtable with students related to UNLV Medicine, the dental school, and Touro University on affordable housing. Tell everybody, this was an important forum to explain this to everyone.
So, David, on this show and everywhere I go, I talk about housing and the need to improve housing conditions within Southern Nevada, making housing units available for people at an affordable rate. This roundtable was medical students, dental students, nursing students from the 3 schools, asking them what are their expectations. Mm-hmm. It's helpful for me as a policymaker to know what changes I need to make in order to meet their expectations. So if we want doctors to say in Nevada, we have a great medical school, now we need them to raise their families and open up a practice here. The same thing goes for nurses and dentists as well. And so understanding what their beliefs about their future are, I think are very helpful in how we guide the city's codes, for example, and what we think about with density and how we master plan the future of Las Vegas so that we can do our very best to make sure those doctors stay in Southern Nevada.
Yeah, it's a challenging thing because housing for everyone has rapidly increased, and we've seen supply not being able to keep up with demand. And it's created some challenges. Nurses make good money, but they're not wealthy people, and they're finding difficulty finding housing that's affordable. People that work in medical offices, dental offices, are also finding it very difficult to find a place to live right now that's affordable.
And that was so enlightening with this group of young people who expect to have the American dream, and they're going to go to school, they're going to have lots of student debt, and they want to move into a 3,000 square foot 2-car garage with a big backyard and a pool just like their parents had. Given the state of land within Southern Nevada, that may not always be possible, especially right as they graduate medical school or dental school or nursing school. And so I want to make sure that we provide them options so that they can have somewhere to go, so that it's a nice quality living condition right when they get out of school. And then over time, you eventually pay off student loans, hopefully, and you make a little bit more money and you graduate into something else. But we're out of all levels of housing right now. And so we need to make some adjustments at an elected official level so that housing is possible and attainable for everybody, no matter where you are in your career.
One of your trademarks since you've been in office is to listen. You do a lot of listening to the constituents. We'll talk about housing, but also you also led a forum, an opioid town hall. Let's talk about that a little bit. Opioid overdose, opioid use is at an epidemic level.
This was in partnership with the Health Equity Coalition led by Jose Melendres. And I was on a panel with Senator Fabian Donate. We were talking about Black and Indigenous peoples of color and opioid use. So what I talked about is, one, there's an opioid settlement that the city entered into along with every other city and county in the state of Nevada for funds coming from a settlement. Also, the city is partnering up with the Metropolitan Police Department to include some social workers, case workers with the police department, so that at that point of crisis, when someone calls for help and because of an overdose or because of a family situation where drugs are involved, we engage a social worker right away to say, how can we keep you from becoming homeless? How can we get you into systems of care and surround you with a loving environment where you can move on to a better point in your life? That, in addition to what we talked about earlier, the Community Health Center, which has a strong focus in on mental health and physical health to help a population that desperately needs it.
Yeah. The lawsuit you mentioned, it's a class action suit. These are taking place all across the country. Communities, states are entering in to where the manufacturers of the opioids, because of how addictive they are going to have to settle to help communities deal with the crisis. And I think the pandemic just made things even worse when it came to the opioid situation.
I think everybody watching would agree that mental health is at an all-time low, mental health challenges at an all-time high, which always brings about the question of drug use or drug abuse. And so we have got to get ahead of this curve with regards to drug abuse and mental health in order to create that environment we all deserve.
Yeah, it's a crisis situation, and families suffered greatly out there. Family members have overdosed or have had family members suffer with addiction through all this.
And we all know someone. So it's all within 1 degree of separation. There's no one out there that's immune from it.
Yeah, it's very, very widespread. And then, Councilman, this is pretty cool. We had a Tech Alley event. Las Vegas, a lot of people may not know this, but we're becoming a hub for tech here. A lot of California companies are saying, you know, it's kind of tough to do business in California. We're going to come to Nevada. And we've had to expand our tech center. That's a good problem to have. And we recently had an event with Cox Business, Switch, and our own Department of Economic and Urban Development, Office of Economic and Urban Development, we call EUD here at the city. So here's the event taking place right now, and there you are.
I don't look like an elected official. I look like a cool techie person, right?
See, look
I
at
got
you.
my cup of coffee. I got my jacket on.
Fitting right in.
I got to fit in with the younger crowd.
Exactly.
No, that's an important event. I'm trying to learn as much as I can about their needs. So it is new, young entrepreneurs trying to grow a startup business here. And they have needs just like the medical students and the nursing students. They want to settle in Las Vegas. They want to make this their home. So it's really trying to figure out what it is that will create an environment for them to be super successful. Yeah. So I'm learning as much as I can on the technology side, and then also learning about the healthcare technology side to see if I can blend my two worlds of healthcare and housing and technology and kind of put it all together and make sure we're meeting the needs of that population.
We've got a lot of infrastructure in place downtown, fiber, for example, fiber connections that help these tech businesses get started. And again, we had an innovation center that quickly filled up. Again, this was kind of an opportunity, an incubator, if you will, to help these businesses get a leg up and get started and to put some roots down here in Las Vegas. It was so successful, we've had to open a second branch, basically.
And I'm having multiple requests about opening up multiple branches related to healthcare technology. And then recruiting companies from around the globe to see how wonderful Las Vegas is, because when those young entrepreneurs are coming here and they're starting their families, they want their friends from around the country to move here right there with them.
So we all know that Las Vegas is big for gaming and tourism, but it's also becoming bigger and bigger for tech. So
and innovation.
Yeah, exactly. Very cool. And Councilman, you know, you're just covering all bases here because you recently had bingo night at Sartini Plaza. This was back on January 13th, and they always appreciate when you come by and say hello.
Don't underestimate those seniors. They take that bingo very seriously.
Exactly. Don't mess this up. Yeah.
So we showed up there. We brought some coffee and some treats. It's cash bingo, and they play. Let me tell you, they play. So it's a fun experience. It's the first time they've been getting together for the last 2 years, and so it's really nice to go there because they all know me and I know them, and it's just a fun event, a little bit competitive for me. But it's fun to be there.
You know, it's interesting. Those folks really dealt with a lot. They were kind of quarantined, limited to where they could go. With Sartini Plaza is an apartment complex for seniors, and very limited access, from the outside, limited access for those that live there through the pandemic to try to keep everyone safe. But I think a lot of the folks felt like they were prisoners in their own homes.
And they were, They couldn't get out. They were instructed to stay inside for their own health. But 2 years of being on the inside creates some issues and challenges. So it's good that we're competing over bingo. That's
exactly
the way the world should be right now.
Socializing again, and better to think about bingo than all the problems of the world, for sure. Well, good for you to get out there and let them know they're not forgotten through this whole ordeal with COVID-19. And you had your brews with Brian. This is pretty cool. We do coffees, but we do brews too, depending on what time of day you're inclined. This took place back on January 26th, which is an opportunity for you to meet casually with your constituents again.
This was at Grapevine at Lake Mead in Buffalo, and this is some of the new neighborhood associations for me, and some new ones I just picked up in redistricting. And so they came, we drank, we ate, we talked about some of the issues and challenges. What I find interesting is if you listen long enough, everyone gets their gripes out, and then they settle in and everyone's happy again. They just needed to get their gripes out, and then they start talking and chatting. And so that group actually were all hugging, and they exchange email addresses and phone numbers.
That's good.
And super nice that we can foster an environment where people can come together and forget all the challenges of the world and just be friendly and have fun.
What were some of the things you were hearing? What were some of the things that people were concerned with?
So this will lead into the next segment. It's always traffic. It's 100%.
Perfect.
People are afraid of bad drivers. They want to make roadway condition changes, but it's bad drivers that are really creating some unsafe environments. And so Commissioner Naft, I think, will talk about some of the leadership that he's demonstrating, and we've got to make some adjustments because the traffic fatalities this last year have
out of control.
It's horrible.
Well, again, Councilman, you were exactly right. That's a perfect segue into our next segment. We need to take a short break, but when we return, local leaders form a new effort after Nevada sees one of its deadliest years on local roads. That's next. We're going to tell you what they're doing, so please stay with us.
You think you've had a bad rideshare experience? Even the worst rideshare would be better than one of ours. But if you drive after drinking or consuming cannabis, this is the ride you're gonna get. Plan a ride, or law enforcement will pick you up. But at least you won't need to tip your driver. 0 fatalities. Lives are on the line. Paid for by the Nevada Departments of Public Safety and Transportation.
Welcome back, everyone. Clark County recently created a new office that's committed to keeping Southern Nevada roads safe. With us today to tell more is County Commissioner Michael Naft. Commissioner, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it. This is so important. Councilman and I were just talking about how deadly the last year has been on Southern Nevada roads, and we're off to a bad start already in 2022. It's very frightening.
You're absolutely right. Thank you for not only having me on, but for all of your partnership. The councilman's been an incredible ally on this issue, as has the city of Las Vegas, as we really get serious about tackling why it is the rates of fatalities have gone so dramatically up, why it is we've had the worst year in decades this past year, and why it is that we only made it a couple hours into 2022 without the first fatal car accident of the year. So I appreciate your partnership, and I appreciate you having me on today to discuss it.
Commissioner, help the councilman and I think everyone's asking themselves, what happened? Why did the number of fatal accidents jump so dramatically? Is it because of the growth here, or is it just people, is it the pandemic? What do you think contributed to us having such a deadly year last year?
I think, as with most problems in our society, there is no one silver bullet solution here. There's not one point of conflict. But what we absolutely saw is coming out of the pandemic, as roads filled back up, people didn't slow down. So while the volume of car accidents, the volume of incidents occurring during the early days of the shutdown, and while traffic was at lower rates on our streets, while that the volume was down, but the seriousness of each incident was up because you had drivers going a lot faster than they have in the past, simply because they could. The streets were open, and as the streets got more congested, you didn't see people changing their behavior quite as quickly. So people still go faster than they should, and they still don't obey all the rules of the road. And I think what it comes down to is looking at this from the full picture, right? And that's why in Clark County, and with the support of our colleagues here at the City of Las Vegas, we've gotten a lot more serious this year about handling this problem. And I'm glad to talk with you more about that.
Yeah, sounds good. And Councilman, I know that's near and dear to you. I know something that you and have made a commitment to Commissioner Naft to work with him on that, as well as many other elected officials here in Southern Nevada, to try to bring this situation under control, at least to slow down the trend that we're seeing. It's very, very disturbing.
Yeah, and I appreciate the leadership of the commissioner, because he's taken a point that, like I said, it comes up in every single neighborhood meeting where people are just afraid of the cars that are out there. Mm-hmm. And so I represent some of the older neighborhoods, and I can articulate that the roads were built for a much smaller Las Vegas. In Ward 1, it's the oldest part of our community, and the roads were built for a much smaller town. And our population has demanded that we change how we think about traffic control. And so some of the changes that I'm making really in the medical district are, one, lowering the speed limit. We did that on Charleston. Widening sidewalks, so we encourage people to spend less time driving and more time walking. And I think that's a piece of the puzzle, but like the commissioner said, is we have to get really serious about making some adjustments to how people drive, or the infrastructure that we create for them, because we shouldn't continue this way without making adjustments.
Yeah, clearly. Commissioner, the county, with your leadership, created a new safety office, a new Office of Traffic Safety. Tell everyone about that move and what the mission is there.
Absolutely. Well, at the end of the day, so much of the decisions that are being made that impact traffic safety occur at the local level, whether it's the City of Las Vegas or unincorporated Clark County, where we're making engineering decisions, comprehensive planning, and land use decisions, or whether it's our joint role overseeing the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department that has a say-so in the enforcement side of this problem, or whether it's the trauma center in the councilman's district and owned and operated by Clark County at UMC, where patients arrive day after day seeking life-saving treatment, or sadly, whether it's the Clark County Coroner's Office, where far too many of our drivers, pedestrians, vulnerable road users end up. So what we did was we finally stood up and admitted that local government has to be part of the solution. We have to take some ownership of this problem, and we created a Clark County Office of Traffic Safety. We're one of the only municipalities in the United States to have this role. It's largely held at the state level, and I commend the Nevada Department of Traffic Safety for the role that they've done so far. But at the end of the day, we're pulling the levers here at Clark County, the City of Las Vegas, local government, that impact how this issue and how this problem can be addressed. So that's why we brought the office into Clark County. We have made clear, and I'll make clear again, this is not a jurisdictional issue. This office is going to be there to help all of our municipalities that need help, because at the end of the day, when you cross the street, all of the rules don't change. The rules of the road don't change. And whether you're in the Henderson portion of my district, or here in the City of Las Vegas, or North Las Vegas, it shouldn't matter who's responding to you. The facts are everyone needs to be part of the solution. So that's what the office is going to focus on, connecting all of these dots from beginning to end, from education and from engineering, education, all the way down to enforcement. That's what we're going to be focusing on.
Excellent. I know a lot of people are applauding the move, saying it couldn't come at a better time. Commissioner, what's the first order of business? You talked about several things, but what's the first thing that the office will attempt to do?
Well, I think we need to get a handle on the way our roads are designed. The councilman just said it. We have different parts of the district, but we are the Wild West in many ways. We have some of the fastest, longest, widest roads anywhere in the United States, and because of that, people have the ability to drive really, really fast. Now, at the end of the day, whoever's behind the wheel, whoever's committing the crime and breaking the rules, driving under the influence or just driving irresponsibly, they are the ones ultimately at fault. But we all have a role in the solution. So whether it's looking at techniques to engineer better roads, which is something that within our planning department and our public works department, our director of traffic safety has already been meeting with and engaging with. That could happen here too at the city, and I know it does. Or whether it's looking at the ways that the Metropolitan Police Department handles traffic safety, making sure that every single officer working a beat understands and knows that they are part of the solution for traffic safety and part of saving lives that are behind the wheel or not behind the wheel. Yeah. So those are kind of the first steps that have taken place. There will always be an education element that's part of this. We can never take our foot off the gas for a moment in terms of communicating to the public, making sure people know the responsible way to drive, making sure that they understand the weapon that's at their hands when they're operating a motor vehicle, but also making sure that they know that government, that local leaders are going to think real carefully and cautiously about how we're developing out our community in a way that's going to encourage safe driving, a way that's going to encourage people to get out of their cars when they can and ride safely on a bicycle or walk. It's at the end of the day, it's a quality of life issue for all of us. People want to know that when they hit the road, they can do so safely.
Yeah, well said, very well said. And Councilman, I know we're on board 100% to see that this is a success as well here at the city.
Yeah, and I can't underscore enough the importance of leadership in this particular area and the leadership that Commissioner Naft has demonstrated. And he probably hears this as much as I do as people ask about the relationship between elected officials, between the city and the county and the state. And while there are areas where we're a little bit competitive, and don't get me wrong, Commissioner Naft's pretty competitive, I can sense it. But we come together and we find common sense solutions to resolve issues for folks and make life better. And I think you see that more and more often now is the city and county in particular coming together to create a better living environment for everybody. The leadership from Commissioner Naft talking about traffic safety is one of those most noticeable, but there's lots of things between the cities and the county and the state that everyone's working together to do their very best to make this a better place to live for everyone.
Well, here. We're very glad. Well, Commissioner, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Thanks for explaining what's going on. Thank you for your leadership to deal with a very serious issue going on in our community right now. So thank you and best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Well, Councilman, Commissioner, we're just about out of time here. We want to tell everybody out there, we always want to hear from you on this show. So if there's something you'd like to share with Councilman Knudsen, you can find him on Facebook and Twitter. You can also contact him at 702-229-6405 or send him an email. His address is bknudsen@lasvegasnevada.gov, and he or one of his great staff get right back to you. So, Councilman, great job. We'll have you back in 6 weeks with another update from Ward 1, and it's going to be busy. It's always busy.
It's always busy. We got more bingo to do.
That's exactly right. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, David.
Folks, don't miss our next show beginning on February 10th with Ward 3 City Councilwoman Olivia Diaz. You can now catch all of our KCLV shows on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire. And at the end of this program, watch for our QR code during the closing credits so you can subscribe to our newsletter. We hope that you do. Also, don't forget you can watch us live on the internet at kclv.tv. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time around.